Hey guys, so in this video we're going to go over the medium budget version of the Weapon Master Witchhunter crossbow build. Alright, so first of all let's go over a couple of the build goals that I had in mind when making this. First of all, I wanted it to be able to kill T4 Zesht in under about 10 seconds. You know, not like just like kind of barely getting by, but we want to be able to actually kill him reliably, right? So that was one of the main goals. Also did want to keep the double herald chaining set up so we can have a very good clear in maps. And yeah, the end result is actually pretty good. And I think in this video, we are going to be mainly covering the gear, as that's one of the main things that's changed. The passive tree is almost the same. There's a few differences, but would like to actually spend a lot of time going over the gear and how I actually bought it and that kind of stuff. Alright, so let's see if we can find a breach that is an augury or crypt. Oh, I think there's one, yeah, here. Okay, we'll do Blooming Fields, and I guess we can do this map. It's this one does have monsters gain ES based on their life, and would like to note that so in this current version of the build, we actually are not having enough damage on our Herald of Thunder with the cold conversion to actually reliably freeze enemies. So what we're doing is we're basically going back to the you know, the porcelain ring tech basically, and with this actually allows us to get very consistent what do you call it, herald chaining. But when you do maps where monsters are taking reduced damage, for example with very high delirium, or if there is modifiers on the map where the monsters are going to be taking reduced damage with like where they have like, you know, 80% elemental resistances, then the chaining actually just kind of stops pretty much. So there is some kind of I would say limits to this build, and I would say that very high delirium maps are kind of off the table for this build until you actually get a bit more damage. And yeah, some of the map mods you might have to do some things like when I did a map with elemental penetration, monsters have elemental resistances, I put in like cold penetration and Herald of Thunder, and you know, you can work some things around to actually get over the map mod, but basically just those two things are ones that are going to give you a little bit of trouble. Alright, so we got temp chains on this, which is kind of a bummer, but not really the end of the world. And you can see chaining actually pretty good, right? Alright, let's just see if we actually have everything set up correctly. Oh, we don't. So in the build planner, I'm like having some random link in galvanic shards. Like you can kind of do whatever one. You can put like unbreakable. This is actually pretty underrated, right? Helps with your stun quite a bit, or I don't know, you could put something in here, right? But what I like to do is I just swap them around, right? I put the martial tempo in there because, you know, when I'm doing a lot of mapping, map bosses, you know, you don't really need the what do you call it, full damage on your galvanic shards. I mean your shock burst rounds for these map bosses, right? But you know, so you might as well just get extra damage and extra, like, you know, reload speed and all this kind of stuff on your galvanic shards if you're going to be doing a long, like, kind of like mapping or breach session, right? But you can see these explosions are pretty good, right? And I actually turned off the Witch Hunter explosions because, first of all, I don't really think we actually needed it. Oh, that guy's a little bit tanky. I actually think that this is actually interrupting the Herald chain for some reason, because if this kills enemies, it's probably not going to be shocking or chilling or freezing, right? So this can actually, I don't know, I probably do have to test this a little bit more anyways. But anyways, so what we've done is I'm just taking the evasion and the area effect nodes right now. But anyways, you can do kind of other things. I've tried using the Witchbane thing. Maybe on bosses this is like the optimal setup, but anyways. Also, you can just do explode for the triple explode, and yeah, I think both work out pretty good, but what we're doing right now. And yeah, breaches are, I don't know, like when you get started, it's a little bit, might be a little bit rough, right? It depends on the map, but the Herald chains are actually still working pretty good, I would say. Alright, let's try to find some more monsters. Hopefully we didn't like brick the breach. Oh, that was a nice one. Alright, man, this ring, cool, man. It's pretty fun. Yeah. Well, people are complaining that's like, oh, it's another Herald build, it's another Hawa build. But I mean, this is really good, right? And there's a reason why everyone's using it, because it's just that good, right? Wow. It's kind of crazy. Actually, not gonna lie, with this ring, the clear actually feels better than on my like really expensive one, because I don't know, it just, the explosions are just so much more consistent. But anyways, yeah, that's a breach, and let's go find a map boss. Alright, so we have the Forge map. We'll go do this one. This one we have Enfeeble, all that kind of stuff, but not really that important. And I guess we can kind of look at, see what it's like when we actually go in the Delirium Mirror. And I guess we can kind of cancel it if it gets a bit too rough, but I think just like normal Delirium, if it's like a low amount, it should be fine for the Herald chaining, but yeah, might not be all that good of an idea to do like a 120% Delirious map on this setup. You can see we are still getting a few explosions and chaining, but yeah, I guess we do actually have Enfeeble as well, but I did one map with like 80% Delirious, and then monsters have like increased life, and that was pretty rough, not gonna lie. Okay, hopefully the boss is not that far away, and you can kind of see, I guess this kind of level of Delirium should be okay. Some rare monsters might give you trouble, right? And I've actually sometimes had to swap over to the Shock Burst rounds for some rare combos. You know, when I was playing the higher budget one, Galvanic Shards on its own would just kind of delete them, right? But in this setup, if your explosions don't kill the monster, then you either just kind of do something like this and just kind of like kill them off slowly, or you swap over to the Shock Burst. So I guess that's kind of what it is on this kind of budget, and actually kind of surprised too, because I did end up spending a decent amount on this character, and I think crossbow in general, it's not very good value for the amount of money you put into it, because on this character I've spent about we'll go over the costs later, but it was like about 10 divs, plus if we put everything else together, about like 15 if we count like the gems, like the 6-link gems and that kind of stuff, right? And with that amount of currency, if I did like a kind of like stacker build, like a, you know, Pillar of the Cage God, you can get those running for like what, under 10 divines. Probably get a lot better performance, or bang for your buck, you could say, for your build, right? So I don't know, I think these crossbow builds in general are really bad. Delirium ended, but they're like really bad on the medium and low budget. Okay, we're at the boss, so let's get rid of this and let's just see what the boss looks like when we don't even have the martial tempo in our shock burst rounds, right? Like say we're just doing clearing our maps with our mapping setup, and we come over to a boss and we're like, all right, let's just go kill him. We don't want to be bothered swapping gems around. But yeah, so crossbow, good on the high end, if even, right? And then very kind of mediocre. Hopefully, oh, we don't die here. But very mediocre on the, what do you call it? Low and medium end. Okay, and the boss is dead. So, yeah, damage is definitely there, I would say. Okay, so let's talk about the gear first. First of all, let's go over the total cost of the build so far. This is like an estimate, guys. So I was buying things, I thought, okay, well, might as well just record all of the money I spent on these things. And so here we have all the items I bought and a estimated cost. And thing is, I actually didn't even spend 80x on my rings. These were actually like 40. But I put the price up a bit just to kind of simulate things like the Amulet too. I bought my Amulet for 60 exalts. And so there's a lot of things that can be done cheaper, and I'll go over each one of those as we cover each item. Also, like the 3 perfect jewelers, you know, if we remove the jewelers, then it's down to like 13, and if you did buy cheaper items, I'm pretty sure you could get the setup running on a setup of under 10 divs. But anyways, I don't really like to give those kind of price estimates because, you know, number one, prices change all the time, and I don't really want to, you know, just because I could get it for this price doesn't mean someone else can, right? Because I actually, you know, I think I am pretty good at sniping items for a good price. Okay. Alright, so let's first go over our weapon. Now the weapon we're using is, like we mentioned, very similar to the top end version, but just with worse stats. We're looking for basically just the critical hit chance, and then attack speed and elemental damage with attacks. Those are the three very value stats. There's also, you know, crit multi on the suffix is also very nice as well. Very big damage increase. Okay, then after that, we obviously do want damage, flat damage, because we are not really pushing Hawa to its limits right now, and actually I have decided that we go more on a dex stack route rather than going for a the int version. And the reason is that if we go pure int, we just don't really have a lot of attack speed, and it kind of felt bad. And even though technically going full int and staying at like 250 or 200 dex, you know, is actually technically more DPS in like POB or on your tooltip, the having more attack speed just feels a lot better in general. So I've decided to go full dex, and with the full int setup, it was actually a little bit harder doing ZT4. When I swapped over to the pure dex, basically with like 300 int and the rest into dex, it definitely felt a lot better because, you know, reload time, and this time around we are actually using fresh clip, right, in our shock burst. So, you know, obviously getting more attack speed will help this fresh clip to, you know, ramp up a bit faster. Okay, so let's look at the crossbow weapon, and you can kind of see, and you know, these things might change over time, but you can see like this one's for like 5 exalts. So that's what I'm saying is like, and you know, there's not that many on the market, I'm not gonna lie. So, you know, it might be hard to find these, but you can obviously lower some of the stats. The only thing we're looking for here is like crit chance. You could put crit chance to like 6, right? And get quite a few more. And then you can also just drop down the attack speed to 1.7, and then you'll be getting quite a lot more. Like this one's 1 exalt for this. Like, this is really good, I'd say. It doesn't even have runes in it, you know? So really, really good. And one thing you can do is, it's kind of annoying because, well, not annoying for you, but for the seller, because you could whisper them, then you can copy the item, and then we can go over to POB and paste it in POB, right? Because you can't actually do it from the trade site now. Then we can put the correct runes in, and actually, funny enough, this this 1 exalt crossbow is, oh, he's not selling it, but anyways, well, let's just see, what was it? Only a 0.7% full DPS loss to my current one that I paid for about a divine for. So you can find some very good crossbows. Like here they're like 10 exalts. Like this one's also really good too. I guess it does have fizz runes in, so you do have to keep in mind that the actual DPS of the weapon will be quite a bit lower once you put in the crit runes. Okay, so that's about the weapon. So that's what I'm saying is, like, with I have all these prices set up very high, and you can easily get them for quite a bit cheaper, I think. So like this one too, this one even has cold damage, right? I mean, the crit chance is kind of low, but it's not the end of the world because we do have the Eye of Winter set up where we're applying 10 base crit chance, right? So we'll be at, instead of 60% crit chance, you'll be at maybe 50. So, and that's still totally fine, I'd say, for bossing. Okay, so that is the weapon, and then let's go over the, let's go over the body armor, because this is something that is kind of interesting as well. So in the beginning, I was using this, if we can find it here, a rare body armor. And this one doesn't even have dex or int on it, but you can get dex and int on these as well. And funny thing is, like, so I thought that this was, you know, it's better to go the rare armor because it's going to be cheaper, but turns out that a, you know, global defense attribute regalia is the same price as one of these. These are about 1 divine for about a 350 to 400 energy shield. you know, hybrid evasion, energy shield, armor. And so I was thinking, well, might as well then just use the regalia because it's like 15% more damage. So you can see if we go to this one, we're going to lose about 15% of our damage, but not really even that bad. And I have killed Zesh with the rare armor. And the good thing about the rare armor is you can see our energy shield 4.5. We just gained so much energy shield by going over to the rare body armor setup. Yeah, almost 1,000 energy shield going over to this rare armor. So I think you guys can decide which one you want to use. So if you want a bit more damage and you don't really care about your energy shield, I would say don't go below 3,500. Yes, even this is kind of sketchy, right? I mean, because of Grim Feast and our little bit of evade and the sustain we have, it hasn't been a problem for me, right? But with this kind of ES, you can take a hit from Zesht and survive, right? But if you're lower, then you probably just one-shot you, right? So ideally, you're over 4K ES, I would say. So in that case, you might want to go for a body armor, you know, and if this body armor, for example, let's just say we had something like Dex on it, or if we had like, let's just say Int maybe, then going from the, what do you call it, the Regalia is only a, what, now it's only a 9% DPS loss, right? So, you know, maybe having one of these Regalias with, you know, good stats on it might be a better option in the end because you're going to be getting so much more defense, and you know, if you have one with like good stats on it like Dex and Int, then the damage loss from a, you know, at least a 4 rune Regalia isn't all that bad, and you can get resistance on it, so it is quite nice. Okay, but this is the one I chose to use. I wanted to show the build with this kind of low energy shield setup to see how it performs. I was very curious myself, and it actually is quite nice. I've only died on Zesh T4 testing out different gems and that kind of stuff. In maps, haven't died yet, so I'd say definitely viable. Okay, so we can take a look at the trade link, how we have everything set up. The first one is the Regalia. This one is the rare armor. So, and you can see, like, I had it set for a divine, but these are like 20, right? You can buy them for 20 exalts, 30 exalts. And these have very good stats, right? It's only a 2-stat item, right? So either 2 resistances, or we have Dex or Int, right? And you can change these around to how much you actually need. And when you're making your character, I really recommend that you actually make a POB for your character and start copying the items into your build and pasting them into POB before you buy it, so that you know that how much, first of all, how much resistances you're going to have, how much energy shield you're going to have, and that kind of stuff, right? And if these are too expensive, we can even drop down to a 300 energy shield item, and now you can see they're like 5 exalts. So definitely can, you know, get these items for a lot cheaper than I've listed here. So that's what I'm saying. This price is actually just like probably the maximum you'll ever pay. So, and the second link is the Regalia body armor, I believe. Yeah, so we're just looking for the all attributes and global defenses. They are actually quite cheap, 150x, 1 divine, but you know, on average 1 divine. Okay, so that is the body armor. Let's go over the rings next. Now, you might be thinking, well, how did you get these rings for so cheap? And there's some things we can do with the rings, because like I said, I paid 40 exalts per ring, and I actually have another breach ring here. This one too, this was also only 40. I think it was like 40 or 50. But when I'm actually bossing, I have it set up so that my resistances are actually fine, and I can swap between rings without any problems, right? Because this ring has, when you buy your porcelain ring, you want to make sure you get the corruption for all elemental resistances on it, and then on your breach ring you just have, you know, matched resistances. So make sure you have cold resistance on your breach ring, and I guess I didn't even need fire resistance on this breach ring, right? But just make sure you match the resistances so that you can easily swap together. I mean, you don't really need to, like, you can probably kill bosses with this ring as well, but quite a little bit more damage swapping over to the breach ring for like those T4 bosses. Okay, so one thing we can do with the rings, and let's go over some of the stats. Funny thing also, increased lightning damage and flat lightning damage have almost the same value in terms of DPS, with flat being 1 to 2% more DPS. And I guess this will also help with your herald chaining a bit more because it's, you know, because you have the damages extra. Okay, so there's that. And the thing is also, so you can find rings. We're only looking for either lightning damage or added lightning damage, and then dex, int, fire, cold, lightning, right? So you can find very good rings. You can see these rings are like 10 exalts, 12 exalts, 20 exalts. Now they get a little bit more expensive, right? 30, 40. So you can get them for quite a bit cheaper than what I've listed. And when you're looking for the rings, so obviously we need our resistances, we want our damage stat, and other good stats to look out for is going to be, first of all, obviously cold damage, going to help with the heralds, and then accuracy. So those two stats are very good. Also flat evasion, quite nice as well. Okay, so that is the rings, and let's go over the amulet now. I did manage to actually get a very cheap amulet that allows me to run blink on my, what do you call it, weapon set 1. And in order to do this, we need 50 spirit. And if you can't really get 50 spirit, you know, then you can actually just drop down to 30 spirit and run it on your offhand weapon swap. But I do recommend we have it on our main set because it's just going to be instant, feels a lot better. On the amulet, the stats we want is, so we get 40 spirit, right? And you can kind of tweak this around because we're looking for a solar amulet because this has spirit on the implicit, and then we want a roll of spirit, and we only need 50, right? So you can kind of change these numbers, right? You can, instead of looking for a 40 spirit one, you could look for like, I haven't really found a good way to actually set this up in the actual trade filter, but in the spirit we could do like, say, 37 spirit, right? And let's see if we can find one here. So this one is 39 spirit, but only 10 on the implicit, so we'll have 49, so that's not going to really work. I guess you could divine it, but probably not worth it. But you can find one with, like, say, 14 spirit on the implicit and then 37 spirit on the explicit, and that combined will be over 50, so that's okay, right? So you can change this filter around to your needs, but you can see they're about roughly 1 to 2 divines ish, maybe the price has gone up a bit. Okay, and yeah, basically just looking for all attributes in strength, dex, doesn't really matter, level of all proj, crit damage, crit chance, all of these are value, right? They're all roughly the same value in terms of DPS. Good, you know, bonus if you can get some like extra resistances on the amulet as well, or another damage stat, because resistances are a little bit tight, I would say, on the build. I mean, I do have quite a bit, I am quite a bit over actually. Okay, so for the helmet, basically right now I have the filter set to 300 ES, right? So like if we got a 400 ES helmet, would be over 4K ES at the moment, right? But anyways, it is what it is, and going to 400 ES really bumps up the price, right? So then we're just looking for resistances, intelligence, and crit chance, because we can get crit chance on the helmet. So you can see you get a helmet just like this. This is actually really good because it has accuracy, right? It doesn't even have a rune in it, so that means when you put the rune in, it's going to be like 330-ish maybe ES, so that's pretty nice. And yeah, anything above 300 ES, and then with the stats that you need. But yeah, they quickly go up to about 1 divine. Anyways, so I mean, if you're like taking your time buying the items, kind of watching the market, you'll be able to just kind of live search these and then buy one that's, you know, very cheap, like this one. Okay, so that's kind of how I bought mine, basically, right? Gotta be kind of smart when you buy these things, or end up spending quite a lot of money. All right, so that's the helmet. Now for the boots as well, it's kind of the same thing, except we can't get crit on the boots. And I am prioritizing 30% movement speed this time, right? So 30% movement speed, and then int, and then two resistances. And on the boots, I did actually make it look for all 3, like a combo of 3, because I actually did need a lot of resistances. You can even drop the ES down a little bit. But yeah, they're roughly about 1 to 2 divines, maybe 3-ish divines. Yeah, the boots, you know, unironically, the boots were more expensive than the actual crossbow, which is kind of funny. That is the boots, and we go over the gloves. I mean, it's just the hollow gloves, right? So, but yeah, don't get scammed, and make sure that it's a 3 to at least a 3%, right? I mean, okay, 3% attack speed, and the added lightning damage, the top end is at least 10. You don't want to buy one that's like 8 or 9. So that's the gloves, and let's go over our belt. So our belt, kind of interesting thing with the belt, there's 2 bases we can use. Okay, so there is the utility belt, which has 20% of flask recovery applied instantly. And thing is, so we are running the Eternal Youth, so our life flask is going to regenerate energy shield. And you see how much energy shield are we actually getting? You can check in POB if you hover over your flask. So this gives me 2,800 energy shield over 2.19 seconds. And one thing that's nice with the belts you can do is if you get flask life recovery rate, this is going to increase the amount of energy shield you get. Right, so for example, if you go into POB and we get some, that was kind of something I was thinking of trying, right? But if we get some increased recovery rate from flasks, right? This is actually, instead of only recovering 2,000 whatever 800, now all of a sudden it's 3,800 over 2 seconds. So you can get some really good energy shield sustain just by getting these increased life recovery rate, right? So that's why actually when you're leveling, you can actually check all of the quest rewards you pick. So in, you know, like the Valley of Titans, I got the mana regeneration. And then in the Venom crypts, I got the elemental ailment threshold. I guess stun threshold is okay as well. But yeah, and then one thing you can get in Act 2 is you can get increased life recovery rate. And this is going to apply to our flask and give us more ES, right? And I did actually get the wrong Venom vial thing. I should have got the all attributes, but anyways. Okay, so that's kind of one thing we can do with the flask. And that's why, so there's two bases we want. The recovery applied instantly is quite nice, like panic situation. And then also you can also get on the rawhide belt. This has increased life recovery from flasks. And this is also going to increase our ES regen from flasks. So if we see our flask is 2,800 with the belt, without the belt, it's only 2,200, right? So we're getting a little bit of extra value from the belt. Now, like I said, that's like not super necessary. And if that combo ends up being expensive, then you can just drop that mod. But what we're looking for is fire, cold, lightning resistance, and strength, right? Because we do need strength for the crossbow, and ideally we don't want to be putting strength on our passive tree. So if we can get it on the belt, it saves us some points. And so these are about like 1 div on average for these kind of belts. And if you want to go cheaper, just remove the, you know, flask recovery rate, and they'll all of a sudden get way cheaper, right? 30 exalts. And if you just don't care about the base, just want to go really budget, then they're even cheaper, right? Okay, so for the jewels, there's 7 jewels in total, and 6 of them are all going to be something like this. So we're going to have, first of all, increased energy shield, and then we're either going to be getting crit chance, crit damage bonus, or elemental damage. Either one of these combinations is fine, and you know, you can even lower the values too if you're on a very tight budget or just starting out, right? But they're pretty affordable, between 30 and 40 divine, 30 and 40 exalt range for these jewels. And one jewel we're going to be buying needs to have this meta skills gain 15% increased energy. I mean, it doesn't actually, this is something that isn't super important. It's not going to brick the build, but basically it's just for the cast on shock setup, so that we are basically proccing this in 3 shocks instead of 4, I guess, right? This actually is only important if you're using this 6-link cast on shock setup. If you're on a 5-link cast on shock setup, you would take out the last Eye of Winter and it would look like this. And then you wouldn't even need this meta gem. Right, so this meta gem that we're going to be buying with the meta skills gain increased energy, it needs to be 15%. That's only important, it's only needed if you're using a 6-link cast on shock with this double Eye of Winter setup, right? And yeah, that's the rest of the gear. I didn't include the offhand weapon in the actual price because these were like, you know, two exalts for these, or like 3, 4, 5 exalts. So I didn't really think it was necessary, but basically just looking for attack speed. Want is super fast attack speed because it's going to make our arrows feel quite a bit better. And since on our weapon swaps, we actually don't have a lot of attack speed on our second weapon set, you do want to make sure you have enough attack speed so that your arrows are actually shooting out at a decent speed, right? Same thing for the quiver, just attack speed and then just some lightning damage. Like projectile speed might be nice too, but not really important. Oh, and yeah, like what happened to the staff? And well, okay, so here's the thing. Staff, I actually did like the staff quite a bit when I was running Zesh on like the other builds like the Monk and the Witch Hunter, but it was actually like starting to confuse a lot of people. So, and personally on this this kind of budget, the bow setup feels way better. And just because like you can't, if you can kill the boss in one hit or like 2 seconds, then it doesn't really matter what you're using, right? Because you just proc your cast on shock once and then you just kind of burst them down. But if you have to do two rotations of this where they don't die in the first rotation, so you have to kind of dodge some ability and then you want to go back in and apply the shock again, then it starts to get a little bit awkward with the staff, I noticed. So, and then going to the bow setup was the I tried that and it was quite a bit smoother. So back to the bow, like once again. All right, so let's go over our skills, and the skills are going to be very similar to the previous build guide, so we're not going to go over them too much. And okay, so now I'm using 3 6 links, right? So for the Galvanic Shard, Shock Burst, and then for the Cast on Shock, but you can cut out quite a bit of the cost of the build by only getting Shock Burst rounds to a 6 link, right? And then Galvanic Shards, this can stay on a 5 link. I mean, it's totally fine. Clear will be actually totally fine, and you can even get rid of like Ricochet if you actually feel like you need more damage, and then swap gems around like this. And so this is like the last thing on your priority list to upgrade to a 6 link. Okay, and then after that, everything else can be a 5 link. Even these heralds, Stormcaller Arrow, we do kind of want a 5 link, I think. Yeah, I mean, you could get rid of fast forward and it would still work. The reason why we're actually using fast forward is because the arrow duration is actually 1.5 seconds, right? So when you shoot the arrow, it attaches to the enemy, and after 1.5 seconds, it'll blow up. But with fast forward, it changes that to 1.5 seconds, so it makes it apply the shock quite a bit faster. Heralds, we probably want a 5 link on these as well, but you could cut out some things maybe. And then the cast on shock, this can also be on a 5 link. I think this is only like we do want to kind of like optimize for killing T4 Zesh, because with the double Eye of Winter setup, that means we can apply our critical weakness stacks up in a lot more consistently, right? That's the only difference. So not even super important. And for map bosses, I really doubt you even need this. You could even for if I'm doing maps, just normal map bosses, probably even just take this out and put in something like Scattershot, because it's gonna just build up energy way faster, right? Anyways, so that is that. And with the cast on shock, like we mentioned, we need to get on our offhand set 115 if you are using the 6 link setup, right? 115%, that's the only important thing. Okay, so and then blink, so that is the gems. All right, so let's go over the passive tree. Very similar to the actual end game version of the build, except we are actually going to be running over to pick up the Subterfuge Mask on this setup, and we're converting a lot of these other nodes, like the attack speed nodes, into weapon set points. We also did have to drop a little bit of crit. Now once you get to level 95, you can actually pick this crit area up, and also pick up this area here for more shock magnitude. So that's going to be pretty nice, I would say. And then as far as the tree is pretty much the same, so let's go jump into POB. One thing would like to note, so I set the POB up for level 95, so you can see we actually do have the nodes over here, and we also have these nodes over here, and there is some things that are kind of interesting. So let's go over the config right now. So we have the same thing from before, and even though I think these numbers are not 100% accurate, I don't really think it matters. Like, the whole point is we need some sort of baseline to compare different builds, at least for me when I'm making builds. So when I made the Monk build, or I made the endgame Witch Hunter build, I know that when this number says 17 million, then I'm going to be killing T4 Zesh in 2 to 3 seconds, right? So that's something that's nice that you can actually compare in POB. And that's kind of the reason why I'm sticking to these same settings throughout all the builds. Okay, so we have our Decimating Strike on average, probably 15% more damage, and then we have, so this is kind of interesting, I didn't really realize till now. So the Coming Calamity, what is this? This is this node down here. You can see that this actually doesn't provide any damage increase. If we take it off, we put it on in POB, right? And I guess POB is not calculating the damage while affected by a Herald. So we actually do have to kind of add this, and previously I wasn't even picking this up because when I would look in POB, it'd be like, oh, this is only a 4.6% damage increase, right? Oh, that's nothing, right? But when you do add in the actual this bonus, it is actually quite substantial, and this is going to help out with your heralds quite a bit. So one thing to note when you're actually using POB, this does give quite a bit more value than when you at a first glance. And then, so what I did was I got rid of this area. So anyways, now, so we are going full dex pretty much. We want to get 500 dex and then 300 int. That's the goal pretty much. Mainly focus on dex so we can get at least over 20 attacks per second. And yeah, we do need a little bit of strength, but pretty much everything is going into dex. And on our weapon swap, we actually don't need the strength because we're not using the Verana Timeless Jewel. But anyways, I'm just kind of too lazy to change it. But this should all be dex on the second weapon set, so we get a little bit more attack speed. And the second weapon set, pretty much when you're at my level, this is kind of what it looks like. We have, I only have 1 point in here, right? So we're level 92. And once we get to level 95, we'll actually level up and pick up these other points. Okay, so offhand weapon set, exposure, curse effect, exposure, shock, magnitude, meta skills gain increased energy, and then more shock stuff, right? And then on our other set, we have just all the crit stuff pretty much. Basically, you kind of, when you're doing this big weapon swap thing, you have to first you allocate everything you want on the green set pretty much, and you're like, okay, what do I do with all the red points now? And then basically just pick up whatever you can, right? Okay, so that's pretty much it for the build, guys. Let me know what you think, and for the next one, we're going to be doing one that isn't using the Hand of Wisdom in action. So I think for that one, we are going to have to actually really redesign the tree quite a bit because, you know, first of all, attributes aren't really going to be something we want to focus on. So we'll have to figure out something else. Is even crit worth it at that level? I don't know, but we'll have to see. But yeah, that'll be it for this video, guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.